Hello, and thank you for joining us today for ABA Civil Rights and Social Justices Program in partnership with the ABA Commission on Immigration entitled How Things Work, the legal edition. This is a rapid response project that addresses how our civil rights are being impacted by actions taken by the new administration. My name is Adonia Simpson. I am Deputy Director of the ABA Commission on Immigration, overseeing policy and pro bono, and I'm thrilled to welcome you to today's conversation. These videos are a unique opportunity to address what's happening in America today and clarify misinformation, which runs abound, and any disinformation being spread. How civil rights and social justice advocates can act together to protect the rights of everyone is a crucial goal of today's video. Today's topic is covering a recent DHS interim final rule announcement regarding registration requirements for immigrants that is going to go into effect April 11th. It was published on March 12th, and it's an important reminder about how this information is more critical than ever. As we confront the history of registration and the implications on immigrant communities and attorneys, it's essential to examine how these issues intersect with principles of justice, equity that guide our work, and the ABA in general. We are honored to have with us Valencia Herrera, managing attorney at the Grande law firm, and she specializes in family-based and humanitarian immigration. Valencia's expertise and dedication to this work has made her a leader in the field, and we are incredibly grateful for Valencia's willingness to share her insights with us in today's conversation. Welcome, Valencia.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Well, without further ado, we have a lot to cover and a lot to discuss. So I'm going to dive in and we're going to have a conversation. So first of all, Valencia, registration isn't a new concept. This has been around for a little bit. Can you provide just some quick historical context, excuse me, on how this has been used in the past?
Yes, sure. Yes, that is correct. Registration is not a new concept. Its past implementations have often been tied to the periods of national security concern. So, such as in World War II, the Alien Registration Act of 1940 required all non-citizens to register and report their address to the federal government, and they could do this through their local post office. And in 1952, these provisions under this act were incorporated into the Immigration and Nationality Act, and this became Section 262. And this requires all non-citizens 14 years of age to register with the federal government within 30 days of arrival, with some limited exceptions. So at this time, additional provisions were also incorporated, the INA 266 and INA 264, which attached criminal penalties for failing to register and carry proof of registration. Post 9/11, we saw similar actions with the National Security Entry Exit Registration System, which required registration for individuals from predominantly Muslim majority countries. USC announced that the Trump administration will revive these provisions of U.S. immigration law that essentially have been dormant for decades. And now the Trump administration is dusting off those laws and has created a new form and process for non-citizens in the United States to register.
Wow, that's a long history.
Mhm.
And I know we just recently saw the interim final rule come out with a lot more kind of clarification. Some individuals may actually already be registered. So, Valencia, who might these registration requirements be applicable to, and who's already considered registered?
Okay, that's a great question. Generally registration is required for all non-citizens who are age 14 and over. And if you have a parent or legal guardian of a child under 14 years of older, younger, you'll be required to register for them. So who is considered registered? Those considered registered under the law are legal permanent residents, so green card holders, those who have been granted parole, even if the period of parole has expired, people admitted to the U.S. on a non-immigrant or immigrant visa, even if those visas have expired, people who are or were in removal or deportation proceedings, people granted employment authorization cards, even if expired, asylees, refugees, and people who have applied for permanent residence, even if the application was denied, people who have border crossing cards, even if they are expired, and those who entered as crewmen. So USCIS outlines this on their website, and it's also in the final rule, and includes the list of types of documents required to be considered registered.
So essentially, it sounds like the bulk of people that may be required to register are people that maybe haven't had any interaction or
Right.
application with
Yes.
USCIS or the Executive Office for Immigration Review.
Yeah, so who's not considered registered is exactly those people. Anyone who has not been issued one of the documents I mentioned previously and provided fingerprints, and they're not considered registered. So let's just break this down a little bit further. This includes anyone who entered the U.S. without inspection, as you mentioned, and that has not had any contact with the federal government or immigration officials. And people, even people who have entered without inspection and have applied for TPS or deferred action for childhood arrivals, DACA, but were not granted employment authorization or advance parole. So this means those who applied for TPS and DACA, but who have not been fingerprinted and their applications have not been approved. This also includes adults and children present in the U.S. who have pending petitions for an immigration benefit and who have not been granted employment authorization documents. So this would include those with pending or approved family petitions or waiver applicants who have not been granted work authorization. And also further, it states that Canadian business or tourist visitors who are not issued an arrival document, the I-94, are not considered registered, and children turning 14 years or older must registered individually on their own, even if they were registered prior by a parent.
Wow. So Valencia, that's
Mhm.
millions of people potentially,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
Wow. So we've talked about who needs to register, who doesn't need to register. But can you tell me a little bit about how people are required to register, what this process looks like, and how it might impact certain communities?
Yes, definitely. So the new form the administration has created for the registration process is called Form G32R, which non-citizens will be required to submit through a USCIS online account that they must create through the USCIS website. So the new form will ask for information, ask for a lot of background information, the country of birth, date of arrival. Also ask questions about your activities in the US and future activities in the US, your address history for the last 5 years, your contact information, and also this is concerning, they're asking about information about your parents, spouses, and once this information is submitted to USCIS, you'll be sent a notice to appear for a fingerprint appointment where immigration will perform a background check. And after this background check is completed, the non-citizen will receive a document constituting proof of registration, which is the proof of alien registration document through their online USCIS account portal.
And then they'll have to print that out and carry it
Right.
with them, right?
Exactly.
And yeah, and is there any filing fees to do this at this point?
So at this point, there's no filing fees. In the interim final rule right now, it does suggest a $30 biometric fee, and that's not finalized. They're going to request public comment regarding that fee, so that could potentially be a fee associated with the form.
Interesting. And so this registration all happens online through my USCIS
Yes.
account. I've tried to do things. It's not really intuitive. It can kind of be a little clunky and cumbersome. Do you have any concerns about how this could impact, certain communities, maybe people that don't have access to easy access to internet or computers? What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, so since it's done online, those who are less tech literate can find it difficult to navigate the website and create an online account. Individuals with limited access to technology or internet may struggle with the online registration, and also language barriers can prevent full understanding of the requirements since everything would be in English.
Interesting. So there's a good portion of the population that even if they want to register, may just have barriers in doing so.
Yes, correct.
Wow. So we've talked about the registration process, and then and some people may already be registered. A second piece of this is potential penalties for like not carrying evidence to show that you've registered. What are people going to need to carry with them to be able to demonstrate that they've been registered?
So those 18 or over are required to provide and show or have on them essentially proof of registration. So if they're registering through the USCIS online account. They need to carry their proof of alien registration document. If they're already registered, like green card holders, they should carry their green card at all times. And those who have work authorization, parole documents, passport emission stamps, I-9 for arrival records, and notices of immigration court hearings, if currently in removal proceedings, should also carry those at all times. Those who have pending prescribed registration forms listed in the regulations, like an application for legal permanent residence, should carry proof their applications have been submitted to USCIS.
That's helpful to know. Thank you so much. Because there's between failing to register and failing to carry documentation showing evidence of your registration, there's potential implications. There's potential criminal implications. Can you tell us all a little bit about that?
Yeah, so the federal government is now encouraging federal prosecutors to enforce violations of their registration requirement with a number of misdemeanor and criminal offenses. So, willful failure to register yourself or one's child under 14 could be punishable up to a fine of $5,000 or up to 6 months of imprisonment or both. Failure to carry proof of your registration document is punishable by a fine up to 5,000 or 30 days imprisonment or both. And failure to notify the government within 10 days of a change of address after registering could also be punishable up to a fine of 5,000 up to 30 days imprisonment or both. So the rule also points to separate criminal offenses for someone who registers with false information. This could be a misdemeanor offense and grounds for deportation.
That's a lot of that's a lot of information
Yeah.
and a lot of implications. And I think, weighing the criminal and civil implications with the requirement to register, there's been a lot of discussion amongst immigration attorneys about what our ethical obligations may be to advise current or past clients about this registration process. What's your advice for us? How should we navigate this?
Yes, I'm part of a lot of immigration groups, and this is a hot topic for discussion. And I believe attorneys should educate their clients on what is known at this time, what the law says, and the requirements under the law. Attorneys should not only should also educate their clients about the possible penalties they could face if they don't register. And attorneys should also educate their clients about the possible penalties of what registration could lead to. It's hard because we want to be zealous advocates for our clients and look out for their best interests. In this situation, those who register could be opening themselves to be detained by immigration officials and put into removal proceedings or even deported. And those who choose not to register could be in danger of criminal prosecution. So it's very essential that we provide our clients with the necessary information so they can make the best informed decisions from themselves and their families.
And it's so tricky because even, registering, failing to register and if you have these criminal consequences, you'll still may end up in removal proceedings or deported. It's a difficult situation. And I appreciate your
Uh,
feedback on that. And I think there's going to be a lot of guidance coming out from organizations about how we navigate this. But I think informing your clients about what this all means is paramount.
yes.
Um, so Valencia, I know every time we see changes in policy in immigration, I think something that also always happens is we see a rise in notario fraud or just bad actors in the community that may be trying to take advantage of this situation. Can you talk to our audience today about what they should be on the lookout for and what are some of your concerns?
Yeah, so it's important that those who are affected by this policy consult with a competent and reputable immigration lawyer to receive the most appropriate advice for their circumstances. So whenever there are changes, policy changes, especially within immigration, we do see a lot of bad actors exploiting and taking advantage of people, and that happens a lot within the immigrant community. So it's important to look out for someone claiming registration could lead to a green card or citizenship. That is not true, and unlicensed notarios providing inaccurate legal advice or charging exorbitant fees to help with the registration process.
That's really good to know. And people, always have options to report notario fraud through either through their state attorney general's office. There's a lot of resources out there. So it's really important that people flag this for the appropriate authorities because it's really unfortunate to see people in the community
Right.
being taken advantage like this. So I think there's a lot of concerns about how this really kind of enforces and supports this mass deportation plan of the administration. Has there been any approaches in other avenues or any attempts to address this through legislation? And if so, what is something that people can do to try to advocate for this or support it?
Yeah, so in response to this policy, Representative Jayapal has introduced the No Roundup Act, which aims to repeal the president's authority to mandate immigration registration and prevent mass enforcement actions that could lead to deportation. And so individuals, can support this by contacting their congressional representatives to express concerns and also support advocacy organizations that will probably be working to challenge this policy.
I appreciate that. Thank you. That's some really important information. And for all of our viewers to this video series, we are going to be including a lot of resources about this interim final rule and registration and things that you can do to educate yourselves and others in the community. So I think we have a lot of Valencia, we have a lot of concerns about this registration process. I think in the IFR, it explicitly says that this really is a mechanism to ensure efficient and safe removal of individuals. From your perspective, as we kind of wind down this conversation, what are some of the big implications of this, and your concerns that you think it's really important for everybody watching today to know?
So, from my perspective, this registration requirement, to put it frankly, is deeply concerning to me and will undoubtedly have a significant impact on our communities. The rule fails to consider the devastating impacts it will have on immigrant families and mixed status families. From my perspective as an immigration advocate, this registration definitely serves as a tool to criminalize people for being undocumented and target individuals for detention and deportation. It is very clear that you mentioned that this new registration process is meant to further the administration's mass deportation agenda and push people essentially to self-deport. And this will lead to family separations, increased racial profiling, and instill an atmosphere of fear and anxiety among our communities.
Wow, that I think sums it up extremely well. I think we covered a lot of ground today. I think there's going to be a lot to be seen once we see this implemented and the registration process actually start. Before we wrap up, is there anything else, Valencia, you'd like to share with people today?
No, I think that covers it. And just important for the community to be informed about the rights, be informed about these requirements, and the potential consequences. And that's very important to consider when you're making the best decision for yourself and your family.
I agree 100%. And thank you all for joining us. Thank you, Valencia, for this conversation and shedding light on what's happening with registration and how it works and how it's going to impact our communities. And also telling us attorneys what we might need to do and best practices in that respect. As always, immigration is extremely fluid and it is a quickly changing landscape. So it behooves everyone to really stay on top of the latest of what's happening through webinars like this and other organizations that are providing critical information. To everyone who joined us today, thank you for being part of this important dialogue. The issues we've explored are complex and challenging, but I think coming together in spaces like this, we are really taking meaningful steps towards progress. But remember, the work does not stop here. It continues with actions that we take in our communities, in our workplaces, and within the ABA. So I wholeheartedly encourage you to stay engaged with the ABA's Civil Rights and Social Justice section. Become a member if you aren't. Follow the Commission on Immigration on our social media channels for the latest updates on this topic and much, much more. Visit both of our websites for upcoming events and consider joining one of our committees to shape the work that we're doing. And if you're not an ABA member, we encourage you to join us. Once again, we thank you for watching. Stay informed, keep fighting, and together we're going to make a difference. Thank you.